What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are basically going to continue our coverage over the Hellfire Gala event. And matter of fact, we actually do pick up with the last chapter of the Hellfire Gala event, which is X Factor number 10. Now remember, the Hellfire Gala event was basically a way for Marvel to do a storyline where it's the mutants having a party, where they invite a bunch of humans to the party to basically show humans that mutants are no longer second class, that basically mutants are now first class. Now, when I say first class, I really mean like mutants can show that when they are left alone and being able to actually work to help the earth out, they actually do a great job. They're not a race to basically hate on or to try to get rid of. Now, with that being said, though, the Hellfire Gala event was a party where you had the mutants invite a bunch of humans to the party to show the humans, look at what we have accomplished in a short period of time being a nation, which is a great thing to see. But right after the mutants had showed all the very important humans at this party what they were able to accomplish, you then had the humans realize that the mutants turned Mars into a planet where now humans and mutants can live on. And so it's the X-Men and the mutants basically saying, look at what we have accomplished. Look at what we did. Now, the Hellfire Gala event, the actual crossover, did use every single X-Men title at the time. So X Factor, X Force, X-Men, Marauders, all of them. But when it comes to the final chapter, which is X Factor number 10, even though it is the last chapter of the Hellfire Gala event, it's also the last chapter for the X Factor series, the final book. Now, of course, I'm kind of sad about that because X Factor was a good series, but I can see why it was canceled because at the end, the story did get a little bit crazy. But either way, though, X Factor is the last chapter of the Hellfire Gala event, and also it's the last issue for the X Factor series in the COPPA era. Now, with all that being said, this focuses only on X Factor, and it's kind of like a send-off, like, hey, they're not going to break up, but they're going to be around and behind the scenes now because their book has been officially canceled. And so getting into X Factor number 10, we basically do pick up right now with X Factor getting ready for the big party, the Hellfire Gala event. Now, with that being said, while the team is getting ready, you do have some characters very worried about what could possibly happen at this party. And really, that character is Polaris. Now, of course, we do know why Polaris is very worried, because this section does take place before all the chapters that we have covered so far. But basically, at the Hellfire Gala event, besides the mutant race showing off the different things that they were able to accomplish as a nation, but also showing off what they did to Mars, you also had the Hellfire Gala event basically be used to announce the new X-Men team. And of course, each member was selected by a very special reason. And so with that being said, Polaris is worried because she wants to be an X-Men. She wants to be on this new team that is going to be announced. Now, we already did Planet Size X-Men number 1, and we also did the chapter that came before that, which is, I want to say, X-Men number 21. But basically, they announced the new X-Men team, and Polaris was one of the characters that was selected to be on that team. And so right now she's nervous, but by the end of the book, of course, she would no longer be nervous. Now, this is going to be a huge party. And so you do have the X Factor team getting ready for this big party. Now, if you're new to Marvel Comics and you have no idea what X Factor is at this point, well, let me explain, because they have changed a lot over the years since their first appearance. But basically, X Factor is your detective team on COPPA. They basically figure out if a mutant is dead or not, and if that mutant is dead, they have to figure out how that mutant died. And the reason why, because remember, the X-Men and the mutant race have a way to bring someone back to life by basically the five mutants who are able to make you a clone body. But when they make you a clone body, they download your memories into that clone body. But they have to make sure you're dead first before there's two of you running around the earth at the same time. And so with that being said, that was the reason why X Factor was basically made for. But either way, you do have the X Factor team go ahead and leave for the party. Now, as soon as the team arrives at the party, you can tell that basically this is the writer saying goodbye to the X Factor team. Because the way she's writing this book is kind of her saying like, this is the end. These characters came a long way, and I did so much with these characters in a very short period of time. It's hard for this writer to say goodbye to this title. Now, with that being said, though, you do basically have the X Factor team enjoying the party. Now, Prodigy does leave the party because he apparently left something behind, but of course he's going somewhere else because his storyline is going to continue in this book and possibly other books down the road. But as soon as Prodigy leaves, of course, the party continues on, and you have X Factor actually bonding, having a good time, and actually enjoying the event. Now, we actually do see Prodigy go to LA, and he goes to a club. Now, this is a storyline that kind of has started in the earlier books of X Factor, but we only got small samples here and there. But basically, a cell phone was left behind at this club. Now, for Prodigy, he believes that this cell phone was left behind years ago. But you do have the people who are like bartenders at this bar tell him, no, you left this cell phone here a couple nights ago or a few nights ago. That night you basically disappeared when you left with, and it stops right there. Now remember, in the earlier parts of X Factor, a photo got out of him and Speed basically kissing and making out. The problem is though, Prodigy's kind of like, wait a second, how in the world did this photo get taken? On top of that, when did this happen? And so we're left to believe the idea that there could be two Prodigies out there, or the fact that Prodigy just does not remember that particular night. There's so many questions left around the idea of what's happening right now with Prodigy. Now that is the moment where we basically do pick up with Rachel Summers and Kitty Pryde. Now Rachel Summers is actually the more important character for this moment. And the reason why, because she does detect Shatterstar. Now Shatterstar is a very important character for this section. And the reason why, because what happened back in X Factor number 8 and X Factor number 9, where basically you had Shatterstar deal with a character known as the Morrigan, a character or a being that kind of represents death in a different way. But basically what happened at the end of X Factor number 9 was that you had this being talk to Shatterstar about the idea of when mutants die, they come very close to death, and they actually come very close of meeting some kind of being that represents death. But of course, with the mutant race now having a shortcut or a way to cheat death and bring someone back to life, the big question is now, do mutants even have a soul? Or what happens to a mutant soul when they die and they get very close to meeting death, to meeting a god of death? Because with the 5 being able to make you a clone body and then download your memories into that clone body, is that your soul in there still, or is your soul gone? Do you even have a soul in this new body? And that is the big question that kind of got left unanswered when it came to X Factor number 8, 9, and of course this book as well. Now, that is the moment where we basically do pick up with Prodigy. Now, right now, you have Prodigy basically trying to figure out what happened to him on that particular night. And so he does go to a particular house. Now, when he goes to this house, he does confront some random man. Now, when this man sees Prodigy, this man begins to freak out. And this kind of tells us what happened to Prodigy that night and why he does not remember. And the reason why, because this man right here had killed Prodigy years ago. This man was going around killing black gay men in the area. And of course, he had killed off Prodigy because Prodigy is a gay black man. Which explains why Prodigy does not remember what happened that night, because it seems like Cerebro did not download all the memories of Prodigy, or when Prodigy died, Cerebro was not doing that task. Because remember, when you're brought back to life, Charles Xavier does download your memories into your new clone body, but Cerebro is now used as like a memory bank that holds all the memories of different mutants across the world. And so there could be basically some kind of information that was left out with Cerebro, and that explains why Prodigy had no idea about how he died or why he forgot that particular night. But thanks to him or his past self leaving him clues to kind of help him realize what happened that night, you have Prodigy find this man and begin the process of beating this man. Now, getting back to the party, the Hellfire Gala event, we do pick up with Kyle, the husband of Northstar. And remember, Kyle is actually a human, but you do have Kyle kind of meeting up with Steve Rogers. But while they're having their conversation, we do come to find out that this section right here, this moment, does take place after the X-Men new team was announced. And of course, one of the people who were selected was Polaris. And so you do have her X Factor team, saying congratulations, but also saying goodbye because she'll now leave X Factor and move over to X-Men. But then we actually jump over to Dakin and also Aurora. And right now, this is them kind of announcing to everybody that basically they are dating. Now, this was technically announced back in Hellions, the earlier chapter of the Hellfire Gala event, but basically in that earlier chapter we did see Wildchild get very upset with the idea that Aurora is now dating Dakin and not him, because of course Wildchild and Aurora used to date, and Wildchild is not happy about the idea his ex-girlfriend has a new boyfriend. Now, with that being said, this is where you kind of have the writer kind of wrap up loose ends from earlier chapters in this series. Like, for example, how did Aurora die? Who killed Aurora? Because remember, the X Factor team was basically assembled with the idea that something happened to Aurora. And of course, they couldn't figure out what actually happened to her. They know she was killed, but they have no idea why she was killed off. Now, they did find out who killed her, and it was Josh, some random character, but Josh was also dead. And so that is the moment you have Dakin say, listen, I know right now that basically that Aurora has a disorder, a personality disorder. And of course, she was the one who had killed Josh. And with her killing Josh, she needed something to cover herself up, to basically cover up the idea that she killed somebody. And so it made it seem like Josh killed her and then Josh killed himself. But in reality, she killed Josh and then killed herself. It's weird. It's a real fast wrap up, but hey, we got to move on. Now, getting back over to Prodigy, we actually do pick up with Prodigy right now, talking to iBoy, where basically this is where we kind of learn the mysterious thing that was going on with Prodigy. And what was going on with Prodigy was his past self was trying to figure out who was going around killing off black gay men in the area. He was trying to track down a serial killer. And so his past self went on an adventure to basically figure out who was the serial killer. But he knew that when it came to Cerebro, there could be a blind spot moment where Cerebro would not be able to back up this certain memory. And so the past Prodigy basically left a bunch of clues for his future self or present day self to kind of help remember what happened that night on why he just disappeared. Because while he was trying to track down this serial killer, he got caught and he got killed by this serial killer. But all the clues kind of helped the present day Prodigy remember everything. And of course, now he knows what happened to him on that particular night. Now, you do have iBoy kind of burn this serial killer, not to death, but kind of like a small sunburn. Actually, a really bad sunburn, not small. But then you have Aurora and Dakin appear, where of course they do tell this serial killer, like, listen, man, you are going to be handed off to the cops. They now know everything. They have all the evidence to prove that basically you're this racist man who went around killing off black men, black gay men, because you hated black men, but you also hated gay people as well. And so now you're going to jail. Hope you enjoy prison. Now, this is where you basically have the X Factor book kind of get wrapped up. And what I mean by that is you do have Prodigy, iBoy, and the rest of the team go back to the event where, of course, they do have fun. And you do have Prodigy run into Speed. Now, remember, Speed is the son of the Scarlet Witch. And I want to say Speed and Wiccan are no longer mutants because Scarlet Witch is not a mutant anymore either. But either way, Speed is dating Prodigy. But while you have everyone kind of having a good old time and having a blast, iBoy sees something. And remember, iBoy has different kind of eyes all around his body, and each eye does a different thing. But one of his eyes saw something, and of course, when everybody goes and turns on the corner to see what actually happened, of course, they come to find out it's the dead body of the Scarlet Witch. Yes, the Scarlet Witch has been killed at the Hellfire Gala Event. And this is huge because now the next adventure for X Factor takes place in the trial of Magneto. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So with that being said, please leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.